We just started a brand new series last week called Esther, and we're going through the book of Esther. And so this week we're going to pick up again and just kind of keep moving along in the book of Esther. So if you want to turn in your Bibles to the book of Esther, we're going to pick up in the end of chapter 2, beginning of chapter 3. Now, if you know where that's at, you're going to get right to it. But if you have questions, it's actually right in the middle of your Bible is the book of Psalms. You can turn back 2 books. It goes backwards it goes Job, and then Esther. So if you open your Bible right in the middle, you should land in Psalms or real close to it. So that's how you can find the book of Esther if you're not familiar. And so we're going to be in the book of Esther. And last week, we talked about how Esther was born an orphan, and her older cousin, Mordecai, kind of took her in and raised her as his own. And so he was really faithful to helping her out in her time of need. In fact, he kind of stepped in as a father figure in her life, helping guide her. Well, then Esther gets recruited by the king. The king goes and says, I want all of the good-looking girls to come, and I'm going to pick one to be my queen. And so she gets drafted into this good-looking group of girls, and so she gets drafted, and now she's the queen. And so we're going to pick up here where now she's the queen, and she is her husband, and the king is King Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus. And so it's funny, Bible names are sometimes tricky on the tongue. And so King Ahasuerus. If you ever want a trick to pronouncing Bible names, I do this all the time. I will go actually pull up the Bible app on my phone, or even go to the website, and they have an audio version. And so sometimes I'll even go look, and I'll be like, well, how do I, I'm hacking it up in my own mind, trying to figure out how to pronounce you hit play, and then, somebody way smarter than me says it perfectly, and you're like, oh, that's how you say that name. So if you're looking for a little quick cheater, that's what I do all the time, is how exactly do you pronounce that? And so Ahasuerus, King Ahasuerus, and so Esther is now the queen, and so the queen is doing her thing, and she's being queenly, and the king is being kingly, and they've moved on through life. And some period of time has passed, but now we're going to pick up in chapter 2, right around verse 19. Esther chapter 2, verse 19. And so there's another round of virgin. I'm not sure what this is about exactly, but there is another. Now when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. And we're going to pause right there. Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Why was Mordecai sitting at the king's gate? That seems kind of an odd little detail to put in there. And we'll find out in a minute why it pertains, but he was sitting at the king's gate. You see, Mordecai was kind of doing the same thing he'd always done. You see, he was sitting in the place where he was called to be at. And so this morning, I want to challenge you to be faithful where God has placed you. Mordecai is a model of faithfulness. And we're going to look at 3 different things that Mordecai has done in faithfulness. And I'm going to talk about this one. The first one is this: be faithful where God has placed you. Sometimes life can seem boring and mundane. I'm going to the same job. I'm going to do the same things. I go home to the same family. I cook the same dinner. I do the same thing over and over and over again. But sometimes life can get a little bit boring. But when you're faithful to the things that God has put you in, be faithful to where God has placed you, God will do amazing things through your faithfulness. And because of Mordecai's faithfulness, God did something really, really incredible. I believe that God puts you where he wants you. Sometimes you might think, well, this job isn't really where I want to be right now. This situation, I don't really want to be in it. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get into a fight or flight mode, and I get into a situation that maybe gets boring, or maybe it becomes a challenge, or maybe it becomes difficult. And I start looking, what are my other options to get out of this situation? Has anybody here ever done that? You get in a tough spot and you think, gee, I'm looking around. What are my options here? I don't want to do this anymore. Sometimes God's asking you to stick it out through the hard times because he's asking you to live a life that's faithful, following his footsteps, following where he has put you, where he has placed you. In Psalms chapter 37, it says that God ordains all of our ways. He ordains all of our steps. I don't believe that we're anywhere by accident. I believe that God guides our steps. He guides our paths. He guides our ways. And sometimes you're in a situation that you don't really like sitting at the king's gate every day, like he always did, seemingly mundane things. Honestly, he was hanging out closely to try to catch up with his cousin. He was concerned. He was like, well, what's she doing? How's she going? Maybe he just missed her. But he would go there all the time trying to catch word of what's up with Queen Esther. And so he was in this place all the time. So God ordains your steps. And so let's pick up again in verse 20. And it says that Esther had not made known her kindred or her people as Mordecai had commanded her. For Esther obeyed Mordecai just as when she was brought up by him. So in those days, as Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. And when the affair was investigated, oh man, there's some drama, some investigation, and found to be so, the men were both hanged on the gallows, and it was recorded in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. As Mordecai was just doing his normal routine, his day in and his day out, he was just being faithful to the place that God had put him. And I don't think it was by chance that he happened to overhear this plot against the king's life. I think God is putting all of us, every one of us here, he guides your steps and wants to put you in a place to where he can accomplish his will through your life. Faithfulness can seem boring. Faithfulness can seem uneventful. But be faithful to where God has called you, or where God has placed you. The second thing that I see here is that be faithful to earthly authority. It says that in the Bible that God places earthly authority. In fact, in Romans it says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. Now, I know about you, but sometimes I hear of other people that maybe resist authorities in our country. Have you ever heard of, maybe seen somebody post something on social media that maybe sheds our current administration in not the brightest of lights? People resist maybe they go into name calling of our president, or they go into name calling of our senators, or even our mayor, or anything else that's going on. We see all this name calling that's happening, and no matter who's in charge, you always see people that are name calling. And right now, it kind of bothers me because we have a major election cycle coming this year, and the name calling and the accusations are flying and sometimes twisted and absolutely baseless against all these different candidates, and it's absolutely crazy to me. But listen, God commands us to be respectful and be faithful to the authority that He's put in charge of us. He's commanded that. He said that. That's how we have to live. So be faithful to earthly authority. Be faithful to earthly authority. Mordecai, he didn't get caught up in the negativity. He didn't get caught up in the name calling. He didn't get caught up in talking bad about his boss. He didn't get caught up in saying all these things about people. He didn't get caught up in tearing down the earthly authority that God had placed over his life. So let us be faithful to where God has placed us. And let us be faithful to the authority that God has put us under. Because God ordains it. God orders it. And He works through even those things. Even if earthly authority seems bad, you have to trust that God is working His purposes through all. Even if earthly authority seems bad, we have to trust that God is working His purposes through it all. Whether you agree or disagree with where you're at, whether your boss is a jerk or not, God is working through these things. And sometimes God's trying to change something in you, character-wise, or maybe sometimes He's putting you through a season where maybe you need to step up and be a voice of truth in a good, kind way. You can be right and be a jerk at the same time. I don't think it's justified for us to be a jerk to our boss, even when he's wrong. It's not justified to be a jerk to our president, even if you don't agree with him. It's not justified to be a jerk. You can be right and wrong at the same time. So be faithful to the authority that God has placed you under. Be faithful. Mordecai was a picture of faithfulness. And let's keep moving forward. And it says in Esther 3, chapter 1, it says, after these things, Ahasuerus promoted Haman. Who's Haman? Haman's the bad guy. He's a bad, bad man. He promoted Haman, the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him to set his throne above all the officials who were with him. And the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, why do you transgress the king's command? And when they spoke to him day after day, and he would not listen to them, they told Haman, in order to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. So here's a situation when earthly authority is asking him to violate God's authority. Where earthly is, and so Mordecai has an opportunity here, a situation, a confrontation, if you will, that he's facing. And so Mordecai is facing this thing, and he says, well, am I going to be faithful to earthly authority, or am I going to be faithful to heavenly authority? So I want to challenge you this morning to be faithful to heavenly authority. Be faithful to God's authority in your life. Be faithful to the laws that God has put inside of us and in front of us, every one of us. We can read God's word, and sometimes it's in conflict. But you see, he wasn't a jerk about it. Mordecai didn't go out and talk trash about Haman. Mordecai didn't go out and start spreading rumors. In fact, he didn't cause an uprising. He didn't post negative comments on Facebook about Haman and saying, oh, this guy's the worst. Find the most unflattering picture possible of the guy, because you know how they droll. And you get this, and you put it up, and Haman's now like, the bad guy, and then like a clickbait type title. He isn't doing this kind of stuff. He's doing his job. He's being faithful to where God has placed him. He's doing his job. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing at the king's gate. On top of that, he's being faithful to the authority that God's placed in his life. And lastly, he's being faithful to his heavenly authority. Being faithful to his heavenly authority. Following God doesn't mean that life will be easy. In fact, following God pretty much guarantees that life is not going to be easy. Right? If Haman was not following God, he wouldn't have had this conflict, would he? Haman would have been, oh, whatever, I'll bow down, sure. And Mordecai would have bowed down to Haman. I think I got that backwards, but did I? Yeah, okay, I got that backwards. Keeping me honest, love it. And so Mordecai would have just bowed down to Haman, but he didn't. Because he had an earthly respect, but he also had an earthly faithfulness, and he had a heavenly faithfulness. And those things sometimes collide. Your life is not going to be easy. If you're a follower of Christ, it doesn't mean that everything gets better. All it does is we do answer to a higher authority. And because when we're faithful to God, we also get to see God's faithfulness to us. Amen? So even when his friends told him to bow to Haman, he didn't. If the band would come, I'm actually going to wrap up here in a few minutes. I know it's short today, isn't it? When his friends told him to bow, he didn't. Be careful with who you surround yourself with. Your friends at work that are talking bad about the boss, be careful in how you surround yourself with them. Don't dive into that world with them. You'll find yourself being unfaithful to your boss. You'll find yourself being unfaithful to earthly authority and earthly things. You'll find yourself eventually being unfaithful to heavenly things. It's just a slippery slope. I remember as a young man, I was recently married, and I quickly realized that all the men that I worked with complained about their wives all the time. And I know that's hard to imagine, and maybe with women it's the same way. I never heard it, but maybe with women it was the same way. You complained about your spouse. You find these people, have you ever met those people where they complain about their spouse all the time? Well, if you start hanging around them all the time and start participating, pretty soon you're going to be complaining about your spouse. And then your marriage is going to be like undermined from the ground. The foundation is going to be corrupted from the ground because you're constantly undermining what God has put in your life. When you're hanging out with your coworkers and they're talking bad about the boss, you're going to be constantly undermining what God has placed you in. And if God has called you to be faithful in the place that you're at, you need to work to be building that place up. It's like slashing the tires on the car you want to drive. You're going to go to work every day. Why would you slash the tires on this thing? You're handicapping yourself. You're causing a problem in the place where God has placed you. Your Christian witness, believers this morning, your Christian witness depends on your faithfulness. It depends on your faithfulness. Who you surround yourself with, your friends, the people you let influence your life, they're like an elevator. They can take you up or they can take you down, but they're not going to leave you the same. So be careful who you surround yourself with. Let us be like Mordecai, and let us be faithful to where God has placed us. Let us be faithful to the authority that he puts us under. And let us be faithful to God in the midst of it all. So here's what's crazy. That Haman hears about this Mordecai who won't bow. And rather than retaliating directly against Mordecai, he understands that Mordecai won't bow down to him because he is a Jew. And because of his faith, he won't bow down. And so the plot thickens because Haman, instead of going after Mordecai specifically, says, well, if Mordecai's a Jew and he won't bow, then all Jews aren't going to bow. And last week we talked that there's a pending genocide coming, an attempt at a genocide coming. And this is where it starts. Is while Mordecai is being faithful to where God has placed him, the seeds are planted for a genocide against his own people. Your faithfulness sometimes will seem like it's the wrong direction. Your faithfulness will be tested. Your faithfulness will be tried. Your faithfulness sometimes will feel like, your emotions at least will say, well, I'm not sure, how is this going to work out? And so the plot thickens, and it seems like it's going to go in a really bad direction. I mean, spoiler alert, the Jews live, right? But it seems like it's going to go in a bad direction. But I would encourage you to be faithful where you're at. Even when things look bad, God has a plan. God is working in the midst of it. So the king makes this decree, which is irrevocable decree. And he says, well, whoever this people group are, he didn't even at the time even know, it seemed like. This people group are, like, yeah, go ahead, get rid of them. I don't want an uprising inside of my kingdom. And so Haman writes all this verbiage and makes it happen. And so this thing happens. And next week we're going to dive into that, about what exactly triggers after this point. But faithfulness is not always the easy path. Faithfulness sometimes is the hard path. And so, what does faithfulness look like? Many of us here who are believers, you've said, well, God, you can have my life. I give it all to you. So let's just pretend that your life is worth $100. It's worth more, but let's just pretend for my illustration purposes. And so it's easy to stand before God and say, here's my $100. God, I just give it to you. Take it. Do what you want with it. And sometimes I think that's the easy way out. The $100 is, it seems like it'd be easy to say, God, take my life and be done. Have it done in a flash. Yeah, I'll be a martyr, sure. Maybe it's an emotional moment for you in a great church service, or maybe it's this epiphany when just in your spiritual walk with God where you say, yeah, God, have it all. You can have your way. We even sing songs about that, and we read the Bible, and we make these declarations, and we think, oh, it's $100. Yes, God, have it all. and then we're done. Like, you've made the decision and it's over. But that's not really how God chooses to spend your life. You see, it's through the faithful, consistent acts of following Jesus that he chooses to spend your life. You see, he says, no, I'm going to exchange your $100, and we're going to change it into some coins. And so, I've got a couple pennies here. And God says, well, I want you to get up in the morning and read your Bible and pray. Oh, okay. There you go. I'm spending a penny of your life. Well, you know that person that's been sick? I want you to go pray for them. You know there's that other person that they need some help. Go help them. There's some people that are hungry and need some food. There's some people that need some care and some love. There's some people that need some hope. They're living in a hopeless situation in life. And just through the course of life and constantly just a little bit here and a little bit here, God spends your life on those around you. And in the moment, the impact doesn't really seem like it's that much. You know, it's just a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here. But you see, what happens is that we look back in our life, and over the course of a lifetime, God spends his $100. And he starts giving some hope to the hopeless. And he starts giving peace to the peaceless. And your life starts getting more and more. And as you look back, you start seeing the impact that God has done in your life. And the $100 doesn't look like a flimsy piece of paper. It looks like a giant pile of gold. I want to encourage you, spend your life with faithfulness, serving the God of the universe, providing hope to the hopeless, providing peace to the peaceless, providing what God provides to each and every one of us. As he gives to you, give it away. It seems cheap, like a couple of pennies, but he wants to spend your life in a way that has major impact. He wants to spend your $100, not in a flash, but over the consistent faithfulness of serving God over your lifetime. You will be shocked at the impact that God will have with your life over being faithful to what he's called you to do. So be faithful, church. Be faithful for where God has called you. Be faithful for where he's placed you. Be faithful to earthly authority, but most importantly, be faithful to heavenly authority.